Welcome to the Intuitive Health Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Anthony Rafferty, a medical doctor, a PhD, Reiki and shamanic intuitive healer. I'm here to bring you on a journey of holistic healing that explores the science of the physical body, combined with mental and emotional well-being, energetic and spiritual health. And I am so excited today to be chatting to you all about ancestors. So there's a lot of chat goes on these days about ancestral healing, and it's one of the main themes of what I actually do in my practice. And I really wanted to go into a bit more detail about what an ancestor actually is, the different types of ancestors that we have, and how we can work with them to heal actually some of the wounds that are in our ancestral lineages, how our ancestors can work with us to heal our wounds, and also how we can connect with them. So I'm super excited to have you here today to be able to look at that. And, you know, as with all of the work that we kind of explore in this podcast, and I do in my sessions, there's light and dark to all of this stuff. So when we're exploring what an ancestor is and the different types of ancestors, we'll be speaking into the light and the shadow of that. So the light is obviously all about healing and the gifts that we can actually receive from our ancestors. And then obviously we'll be taking a bit of a deeper dive into the shadow aspect of what needs to be healed and how we can inherit some of the wounds, unfortunately, that pass through some of our ancestral lineages. So let's get stuck in. So there are loads of different types of ancestors. And I first got introduced to this theme when I was reading a book by Mark Wolin, and he kind of talked about inherited trauma and how it comes down the family lineage, and that we basically inherit trauma from our ancestors. And my mind was absolutely blown away by this. I went through the book with a fine-tooth comb, and it really resonated with me. And obviously, that was many years ago, and I've gone on a journey since as a shamanic healer and realized that we actually work with so many different types of ancestors through our healing journey. And there's quite a large spiritual context to ancestral work as well, which is just so fascinating, and it blows my mind. And in the sessions that I do with people where we go deep into their ancestral lineage, the stuff that comes to the surface blows my mind. It just blows my mind. Some of the sessions, even after doing this work for years, still leave me speechless with regard to what is held in the family lineage that can cause so much discomfort and dispute and despair within our lives. So what am I talking about? Essentially, I'm talking about inheritance through our biological lineage. And I'm specifically talking about our blood ancestors. So these are our genetic ancestors. So they're our parents, our grandparents, our great-grandparents, and everybody that extends back along our genetic lineage. So they're literally the DNA that's in our blood. And generally speaking, I tend to find that they have lived experiences that then get transmitted through our lineage down to us. And some of us step forward to be the change makers in our family lineage. We step forward to be the vessel for change, to be able to sit into some of the trauma that's been passed down through the family lineage and to basically transmute it into light. And I know a lot of the people that step through my door are these change makers or the transmuters of this inherited trauma that can move through the lineage. You know, so some of us actually feel a lot of deep pain and fear and shame and all of these things that actually isn't ours. It's been inherited. So, you know, when I went through my medical training, the scientific term that we used to look at all the time was kind of genetic inheritance. And, you know, there's a scientific term called epigenetics, where things kind of move down through family lines and are amplified from one generation to the next. And there's been a lot of studies, especially in animals or animal models, that show that how certain things are expressed within a family lineage can be determined from a point of onset that's much further back in the family line. And this absolutely blew my mind when I was actually in my very scientific head studying medicine and working as a scientist. I found it all really quite fascinating. But now that I actually work on a very energetic and spiritual level with people, I see that, some people come through to me and they're like, oh, I was told that this disease is not genetic. And I look at them and I go through their family lineage and I'm like, well, we may not be able to explain it as genetic in medicine, but this is very much energetic. And there's an energetic imprint or this kind of distortion within the energy body that's been handed down through the family lineage. And we can actually heal these energetic imprints that are handed down through doing ancestral healing, essentially. So what am I kind of speaking specifically into here? I'm speaking into the trauma that's been handed down through the family lineage. And what might that look like, essentially? It could be a great-grandfather who was in the war, and kind of still echoes that within the men, this kind of energy of war and trauma that run through the family line. And obviously, because I do a lot of work with the womb is one of the places where a lot of this kind of energetic disturbance is held. And particularly in Ireland, in which we had the Magdalene laundries, there was a lot of issues and separation between mother and child that happened within our lineages here. So there's some deep, deep wounding that I tend to feel when I work with people on a very deep energetic or shamanic level. And essentially it's about kind of exploring that trauma and removing the energetic imprint that's been handed down through the lineage. However, one thing I love to say to people is it's not all about the shadowy crap that we've inherited. It's not just about the addictions, the grief, the silence, the poverty and the fear that we've taken on. We can also inherit the gifts. And this is the thing. It's all about kind of this lovely balance between the shadow and light. We can also tap into these beautiful energies and gifts of these beautiful skills that they may have had back through the lineage. For example, your maternal grandmother may have actually been a healer, but she actually silenced her gifts. But she could be really have been quite gifted within her healing ability. So, when we look at that specifically, obviously there was an issue with how she expressed herself, and that's part of the wound that we heal while we work with her, and her energy. But the healing energy that you receive as a gift is almost like a beautiful nod to what you can inherit from a more light side of things, which is really lovely. So this is but one of the ancestors that I tend to kind of explore with people, and that's our biological lineage, our blood ancestors. And, I often say to people, well, how do we actually work with our ancestors? How do we connect to them? And I love doing this work. So in practice, I tend to use kind of healing energetics, hands-on energy work, where I bring people through guided meditation and shamanic journeying to actually meet some of these souls. And through practices like family constellation work, on a deep energetic level, we can actually interact with these beautiful energies or ancestors within your biological lineage to do some healing work. And the thing is, some of these ancestors have carried such deep trauma that actually, when we help them to heal during these sessions, it frees their soul. We're doing healing work with souls that may not be actually in the physical realm anymore, and you're relieving them of the burden of some of these energies that they carry in their soul. So I think it's incredibly powerful work. It's really quite amazing what I see in practice. Another practice that I tend to recommend for people if they really want to get deep into their ancestral work is to set up an ancestral altar. And I love working with the ancestors in this way. It involves like collecting some family photos or heirlooms and setting up a sacred place in your home where you offer like healing gifts, you offer beautiful flowers, maybe you offer some kind of alcohol or tinctures that they would have loved, or some tobacco, or maybe if you're baking, you're offering some food to the ancestors. I really, really love this. And having an ancestral altar can be such a beautiful way to honor your biological lineage, your family lineage. And I should speak into this actually because I work with a lot of people who are adopted also. So although I'm speaking into biological lineages here, we can also work with the lineages of the family that we have being raised by. So I think it's quite fascinating when I'm doing this type of work because it's almost like there's multiple threads that feed into the energy system of people that have been adopted. And so, of course, they carry a lot of shadow that they can actually heal on behalf of multiple different lineages, which is a huge undertaking. But also the gifts that they can receive from all of these different lineages is quite phenomenal as well. So, generally speaking, a beautiful ancestral altar in which you make offerings regularly and you set lovely intentions to heal on their behalf and ask them for guidance and healing, which they can support you on. It can be really, really powerful. And I love doing this type of work with our ancestors. The next group of ancestors that I want to talk about are the ancestors of the land that you live on. So this can be kind of work with ancestors that are linked to the land, but also the indigenous ways in which that land holds memory from people that used to live on the land previously. So this is really quite amazing, especially in Irish culture. Because some of the work that I do with people, we're literally going deep into actually the lineage of ancestors and the wounds that the land holds, and we're healing that because land has memory too. Land has an energetic memory, and it's quite fascinating what we can actually tap into on this journey with the land and what we can heal. And what we can inherit from going into legal agreement with the land. Because actually we agree when we sign our contracts, our legal binding agreements, that we become energetically entangled with the land that we live on. So I have worked with some absolutely phenomenal land healers, very, very gifted individuals that use dowsing rods and look at the ley lines and the water lines that run through land, essentially, that people own. And some of these very gifted healers can tune into the energy of the land and can determine if there's any trauma there that needs to be released and healed. But also there's some beautiful energies that we can tap into on the land as well. And this is something I absolutely love working with. And it's the elemental beings and the nature spirits that are there. So generally speaking, I love tapping into the energetics of the elementals. So these are these little beings, kind of fairies and nymphs and other energies that are associated with the different types of plants, the different trees that might be there. Essentially, they're all these gorgeous spirits of these beautiful, beautiful natural elements that can assist us with our journey of healing. And I always find it quite fascinating because one thing I've learned from kind of deepening my knowledge about herbs and herbal medicines is that a lot of people end up living on land with herbs and different beautiful natural elements that grow locally based on what they themselves need in their body, which I just find fascinating. So really start to take note if you're living somewhere with some green space. What's growing locally? How can you connect with the elements, the little elemental beings and the nature spirits that are there? And also, do you know any history about the land? What was the land used for previously? Because land holds memory, it has a spirit. And, it's a really good idea to go into alignment with the elementals, with the nature spirits, and with the ancestors of the land, because honoring them helps us to live in right relationship with the land and to avoid spiritual disconnection. And living in right relationship with the land and with the beautiful world around us is called Aini. It's to live in right relationship with the beautiful spiritual connection that the land offers us. So, tuning deep into that energy, how can you honor those beautiful energies that live on your land? And usually, what I tend to recommend is making offerings. So, that can be with water or flowers, or like I said, some beautiful tobacco or different things that maybe you collect in the home. Maybe it's nuts and seeds to feed the birds and just connect with the land. I tend to love the practice of grounding where I just walk barefoot and I ask for permission. I ask for permission when I enter onto any new land. And also every day when I step into a green space and I'm grounding, I'm like, is it okay for me to be here and connect with the local trees and rivers and stones? And it's such a beautiful and magical way to live life when you ask for permission to be on the land. And we often get a deep sense of, yes, that's okay, or no, you can't be here. And I find this fascinating when I go and travel and do healing with people or do healing on land and just speaking to the land itself and the energetics of these gorgeous nature spirits and elementals. I will always ask permission as well if I'm taking anything from the land. I'll ask the land, I will ask those nature beings and elementals whether it's okay for me to take what I'm going to take from the land. And, sometimes when I'm visiting some beautiful locations or some spiritual sites where the land and the stones and all of these things hold energetic memory of kind of these sacred sites, is it okay for me to take this stone, or maybe it's a twig or some trees or some berries or whatever that might be? And you'll generally get a good sense of whether you have permission to do it or whether you don't. And just try it a couple of times. Tune into your intuition and just begin to listen. And if you get a sense that no, you shouldn't be taking something, well, then put it back. And if it's okay to take some of those things, you can potentially offer them at different sites, which is really beautiful. I carry a little sacred satchel, a little purse almost, in which I have some of my sacred offerings. I work a lot with my ancestral guides, my shamanic ancestors, which I'll speak into in just a moment. But they really like tobacco. So I carry loose tobacco. And I also carry little stones and berries and gifts that I've received from some of the other sites that I've visited. And I offer them anytime I visit a new location as a little offering to the spirits of the land and to the energy of the land, for welcoming me into that space. It's really, really important. When I moved house recently as well, I made sure to really connect with the energetics of the land I was moving onto, with the energy of the house. And I made offerings. I did deep energy clearing. And now what I do is I grow vegetables. I've put in a little a beautiful little wildlife pond out the back. I grow so many beautiful flowers that honor the space. And I've created loads of biodiversity in that space by simply just turning up and kind of co-creating with the land, to bring beautiful harmony and just abundance to the space. So you'd be surprised when you tend to start tapping into these things, how much the land will speak back to you when you begin healing on its behalf and honoring the land that you are on. Really, really, it's so special. So we have spoken a little bit about our blood ancestors, and we've spoken a little bit about the ancestors of the place or the land that we live on. But also, I'd like to speak into a little bit with regard to your spiritual ancestors. So you're outside of your bloodline, you can connect with your soul lineage. So we are beautiful, gorgeous beings of light. And we come into this human body, which consists of blood and bone. But the light of our soul carries a special understanding that extends far beyond just this physical life. So our soul is eternal. It's lived many lives before, and we can really connect and tap into just the magic that our soul holds. You know, what I tend to see through my shamanic work is that our soul comes with a beautiful army of spirit guides, of different deities. We can connect to ascended beings, and we can connect to teachers and healers that exist beyond the veil of what we see as reality in our physical world. And this is one thing that I adore about the shamanic work. The deeper I went into my meditation, the deeper I went into my shamanic practice, and I began to use my third eye, my vision beyond what my physical eyes could see. It's almost like you're seeing beyond the veil of physical reality. You begin to be able to connect with your guides and your ancestors that are more linked to your spiritual and soul lineage. And I just think this is such a precious and magical ability that we can all tap into. So what are these kind of soul and spiritual ancestors? They are essentially beings of light, and they walk with you as protectors and teachers, and they guide you back to your soul path. So, you know, when I was on my shamanic training, I heard a lot about fate, and people talked a lot about fate. But one of the teachers that I have learned a lot from, he speaks into fate being fatal, because essentially fate is what we're handed down through our ancestral lineage. And this is our blood lineage, what we've inherited, and that's the trauma that we walk day to day in the shoes of the ancestors. However, we can actually heal that. We can take the shoes that we've inherited off, and we can step onto the path of our destiny. So if fate is fatal, and that's based on all of the conditioned beliefs and the footsteps that we're walking in through the conditioned behaviors and lives of the people who came before us, what does it look like to step off the path of fate and onto the path of destiny? Well, destiny is what our soul is here to achieve. It's about going on the path to actually free ourselves from all of the conditioned behaviors of our human existence, and to tap more into the beautiful predestined soul path that the eternal nature of our heart and our being is here to live. And that means tapping into our divinely unique gifts and the light that we hold. And it means that we actually have to journey through a lot of the wounds that have been imposed upon us, that keep us small, that suppress us, and prevent us from sharing our authentic light with the world. So what do these spiritual and soul ancestors do? They essentially help us to reclaim the gifts from our past lives, or any unfinished work from other versions of ourselves, so from other realms of existence and from past traumas. It's about working through these things to reclaim the light and the gifts of our soul, and allow us to walk the path of our soul in this lifetime, the path of our destiny, not the path that has been predetermined by our ancestral trauma from our more blood and bone ancestors. It's not to do with what's been fated to us. It's about our destiny. So, you know, one of the most magical parts of this journey that I've been on is the path of connecting with my guides, the path of connecting with ascended masters. And if you want to kind of hear more about what an Ascended Master is, I really recommend tuning into the work of Kyle Gray over in the UK, in Scotland. And he has some fantastic books that have taught me a lot about what Ascended Masters are, and just begin to set intentions about who you want to work with. And there's some lovely activations in some of his books that activate your energy and really clearly define intention to work with specific Ascended Masters. So generally speaking, with my womb work, I will tap into, some beautiful ancient midwives come to work with me. I'll work with the energy of the shamankas, the shamanic womb healers that come before me, and also the guardian of the womb. And I see her as this beautiful energy shrouded in red robes. And, it's just so powerful when you can tap into all of these different guides and deities and masters to work with. And all of us are going to be on a journey with a very unique spirit team. And, sometimes it really calling on with intention, some of these guides can be really amazing. So, for example, some of the guides that I tend to work with that are more spiritual and soul related would be Bridget, Goddess Bridget. I work with her for womb work. I also work with Bastet, the goddess of fertility. She is an Egyptian goddess. But also with regard to some of the priestesses that I help to awaken in my practice, we'll be working with Mary Magdalene and the energy of Mother Mary. So there's a lot of different Ascended Masters that we can work with. And usually when I'm opening sacred space in my practice every day, I'll call on all of my spirit team, all of my guides, all of the Ascended Masters that I'll be working with for that day. And I will set very clear intentions that I want specific guides to step in and help me to do specific work for the greatest good of myself and the greatest good of my clients. And I love it. It's almost like a ceremonial ritual in which I invoke the energies of these different soul and spirit ancestors to work with me every day. I have a specific altar set up that I keep my mesa or shamanic medicine bag on with all of my different essential oils, all of my different herbs with my sage, all of my beautiful incense, and I have sacred well water that I keep there as well. So when I open my sacred space every day, I will always call in these beautiful soul or spiritual ancestors to work with me for the greatest good of myself and the clients that I'll be working with today. I will also call in my blood and bone ancestors to help me remember my gifts as a healer, and to help me essentially channel the gifts that have been running through my family lineage. So that's usually what I will do in the opening of my sacred space every day before I begin to work with people. Now, one thing I will just speak briefly into as well is working with the more blood and bone ancestors, because, although they can have some gifts, and it's been so beautiful to help people step into channeling these beautiful gifts and kind of connecting that energy so it runs clearly through the family lineage. We also have to remember that some of the ancestors have had unresolved trauma. And like I mentioned, things like addiction, violence, grief, or the burdens that they carried that may have manifested through certain cyclical karmic patterns, through specific illnesses in the body, or energetic blockages that existed within their bodies. Some of them will cross into the healing sessions from beyond the veil, and they'll basically want you to assist them in healing. And this is really, it's such a powerful session when this happens. Because actually we can be that catalyst for change. We can be those channels for unresolved trauma, that we can help the ancestors heal and rest in peace beyond the veil. And it can bring a real sense of warmth and safety and peace to the ancestor. And it also helps to settle any emotional heaviness or repeated familial karmic patterns that continue to keep showing up within the family or within your life. So that is essentially what I kind of wanted to touch into today. It was mainly just to clarify the three main groups of ancestors that I tend to work with: the blood and bone ancestors linked to our biological lineage, but that's not necessarily linked specifically to our biological lineage. It can also include the lineage of people who raised us, even if it is adoptive. And especially, we're creating such beautiful modern families these days of shared parenthood and all of this sort of stuff. So there's some lovely energetics to explore there, and loads of different ways in which we can heal along these lineages, but also reclaim gifts from all of these beautiful ancestors. In addition to that, we spoke into the ancestors of the land and the indigenous ancestors, or the indigenous ancestors that lived on the land previously, what it looks like to connect with nature spirits, elementals, and really to honor the land that you're living on, that you're taking part in on the day to day. And of course, we also have the spiritual ancestors, the soul ancestors that help us on our journey. And they're things like spirit guides, ascended masters. You can work with your shamanic guides if you're into shamanism. You can work with Reiki masters that came before you. You can literally call on all of these beautiful healing energies to come and work with you. And you can do this with anybody, with any group or community that you connect with. You can absolutely tap into the ancestral energetics of these gorgeous souls that came before, and you can honor them for the sacrifices and what journey that they went on contributed to how you live today. So it is absolutely an amazing journey to go on to connect with your ancestors, and you can really tap into going on a journey with them through kind of ritual, invoking their energies, calling them to be with you by setting up ancestral altars. And also by setting intention through potentially some shamanic journeying, and also some dream work in which you call certain ancestors to be with you before you go to dream, and ask them to work with you to help you heal when you're in your dream space. So that is me today, talking all about ancestors and some of the fascinating work that I do with ancestors, and how you can begin to tap in to the energetics of healing trauma within your ancestral lineages. But also calling on and reclaiming the gifts that these ancestors can help you to embody. So with love from my heart to yours and all of my ancestors, sending love, Dr. Tony.